Hi, I'm Crystal.
And I'm Neoshia, and you're listening to the Rom-Com Detectives.
Welcome to Rom-Com Detectives episode 20, Safe Word. Today, Neosha and I will be talking about the pilot episode of Castle, Flowers for Your Grave.
This episode originally aired on March 9th, 2009. It was written by Andrew Marlowe and directed by Rob Bowman.
We're going to start off with a case briefing. This episode actually had three victims. It had Allison Tisdale, was it Marvin Fisk or Martin Fisk?
Oh,
Because I had
that's
both. Yeah.
well, Mr. Fisk is a homicide victim.
And then there's Kendra Pitney. So Allison Tisdale was killed with two shots to the chest. I can't remember how Marvin was killed. I think he was strangled with some kind of cord. And
I
then
think so.
yeah, and then Kendra was stabbed. The motive here was money slash greed. There are a few guest stars, most notably is James Patterson and Stephen J. Cannell. Both of them are very famous authors. I've actually read quite a few of James Patterson's earlier books, like his Alex Cross one. So,
Hmm.
and then I didn't know this until recently, but the Judge Markway that they go to later on in the episode is Dan Castellaneta, and he's Homer Simpson. I was tripping out. I was like, "What?"
It's so funny to be so famous for, being the voice of somebody for, wow, like 36 years now, 37
I
years, something like that.
know. And I had no idea what he looked like. I had never like looked it up or anything.
Yeah.
All right, let's get to the episode breakdown. This is a really good one, so we'll have a lot to say. I think it was a really good pilot.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. This is the first time I'm rewatching Castle in quite a few years, and I watched the first episode, and I was swept in again. So I think that speaks to how strong the pilot is.
Yeah, I mean, I think like you, I think it's been like at least 3 years since I watched the show. I've seen the show three times, or at least the first like 6 or 7 seasons 3 times. But yeah, I haven't done a rewatch in a while, so it's fun to go back to it.
For sure. Yeah, going back I think is fun. And then just kind of seeing what it was that caught my interest the first time. So yeah, like I said, it was a great pilot and just really drew me into the show. I I think I've maybe rewatched it. So when it was on, I rewatched it quite a few times. I'd watch between the seasons and catch up and,
Yeah, yeah,
like watch
yeah.
again. That was before there were so many things on TV.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I would rewatch between the seasons, and since the show's been off, I think this is probably the second rewatch I've done. So not too many.
So the opening plays out with overlapping scenes. One is of the murder scene and one is of Castle's book launch party. And I thought this was a really good comparison because it shows like the two different worlds that Beckett and Castle live in. He's like the party boy, like rich guy, the best-selling author, signing women's chests with Sharpies.
Yeah, and she's all business, right? In her business suit, and she's a detective, and yeah, here he is just having parties and hanging out with
Yeah,
yeah.
and like even the apartment that the victim was found in, it's kind of cold and impersonal looking. And like the murder, and it's a murder scene, right? So
Hmm.
yeah, it was a nice contrast. But yeah, so Castle's book party is for his latest Derek Storm novel, which is also the last Derek Storm novel because apparently he killed off the character,
Hmm.
and people give him crap about that throughout the episode.
Which I mean, I think it's interesting, right, to just kill off your main character, and he's very blasé about the whole thing, and he's like, I'll do another one. It's not about the character, it's about the castle brand, and so I mean that's a big leap, and so these
And
are I
this
think.
is and it's good foreshadowing too
Hmm.
for the show. I like how they weave that in. This is like the end of like an era for him, and it's the start of a new one. And
Yeah,
so they just vaguely hint at that. I like that.
yeah, and also too, I think that well, I'm allowed to do a spoiler for this episode,
Oh yeah,
right? Because
yeah,
it's at the
yeah,
end. Yeah, we hope everyone's seen it, but I think it's It's also, I think, nice foreshadowing for the episode that we get to see, just sort of how the male lead detective, that action hero, transitioning to, the female action hero, the Beckett, who's, sort of our
Yeah.
heroine of the show.
But so at the scene, we get to meet our supporting cast too. There's Ryan, there's Esposito, and there's Lainey, and they're all there. And it's funny because I liked when she's like, "Does this look familiar to you?" And this comes back like later on throughout the episode, but they're like, "No." And she's like, "Don't you read?" And I just love that. Like she's a bookworm, and
Yeah.
at the party, Gina, who we learn is Castle's publisher and ex-wife, which awkward. It just speaks to like how inappropriate Castle can be.
Well, and also too, like, I think he maintains pretty good relationships with his exes.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Well, except for Meredith.
true.
Since she's kind of cuckoo. So Gina reveals that Castle's manuscript is 9 weeks overdue, which, oops.
And he's so confident about killing off Derek Storm too. I think that's one of the things that makes it so funny, right? Is, I'm the brand, but he's
Yeah,
9 weeks overdue.
yeah. And she like calls him on it. She seems to know that something's wrong and that he hasn't been writing. And she threatens him, saying that if they don't have the manuscript soon, that he's gonna have to give his advance back. And for best-selling authors, their advances are big.
Yeah, I mean, because that's the thing, right? He's already an established best-selling author, so it's
Yeah.
not that, this is just his first book.
So he seems to know how she knows this info because he goes to his mom, who's over at the bar with Alexis, his daughter, and it was so cute that she's studying at this party. It sets the tone for who she is for the series because she's such a good girl, right? She's
Yes.
good student. She parents her dad. She I don't know. I love the introduction to her.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things too. She's very mature. I think she's a pretty well-rounded teenager,
Yeah.
just in terms of like some of the other teenage characters that we see on different shows. But I do think she's kind of I don't know, like I like her. It's not that I don't like her, but there's like this archetype about her that reminds me a lot of Rory Gilmore, but
Uh
she seems better adjusted.
I like their banter. They have
Mhm.
good father-daughter banter. I like snarky father-daughter banter.
Yeah, for sure.
But so he confronts his mother and he says that, "Oh, did you tell her that I have writer's block?" And she says, "No." But then she tells us that he's been moping around. What did she say? She says he's been moping around in his underwear. So he's definitely struggling at this point, but trying
Yeah,
to
I
hide it.
mean, that's what happens when you let your mom move in. She will know everything you're doing.
But this was a really good introduction to Martha too, because she's like a tiger, right? She's going after the guys that she sees. She mentions like her radar is going off.
She's out on the prowl.
She's so cute. They're both so cute. So Castle offers Alexis a glass of champagne and she reminds him that she's only 15. And he kind of like almost complains to her about how she's not more rebellious. It was cute the way that he was doing it too. He was like, "Don't you want wildly inappropriate stories?" And he's like, Never mind."
Yeah, I mean, I think from Alexis's point of view, he probably gives them both enough of those wild stories, so she doesn't need
Yeah.
to make any.
So he starts talking about he starts explaining to us and to her why he killed off Derek Storm. And it was because he had become too predictable. I guess he was getting bored writing him and he gives an example and says his launch parties are boring too. So I guess in general he's just bored with life.
Mhm.
And he says that he wishes someone would come up to him and ask him something new. And right on cue, Beckett arrives
Yeah.
because she knows what is familiar about the crime scene, even though they haven't revealed that to us at this point in the episode. But she arrives to tell him that there's a link to him to the murder somehow. And so she takes him to the station. He's really excited about this.
I mean, he just said he wanted a new experience, right?
Uh
So,
huh. Uh huh.
getting arrested at his launch party.
And it's worth mentioning too is it was funny because as soon as he heard her voice, he was so ready, like with his pen, like he was ready to turn around and sign her chest.
Oh man, can you imagine Beckett ever getting her chest signed? Because I can't. I don't.
No,
I don't see that
no.
happening.
But she would have wanted him to sign a book, definitely.
Yes, yes, I think so.
But she comes in kind of hot at the station. She's like reading off. She, I guess, pulled his record, his arrest record, and says that he's been arrested for disorderly conduct, resisting arrest, and stealing a police horse while nude, which seems very on brand for the castle that we've been introduced to.
Yes, I do wonder if there were any substances involved in that, but yes, that does seem on brand.
She shows him crime scenes from not just the crime scene that they were at, but a previous one, and he immediately recognizes them as being from two of his books. But then he makes a mention that I think the first body was from one that he says only hardcore castle groupies would have made that connection. He seems to like have an inkling of how that connection was made, but I don't think he knows at this point that it was specifically her.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know that he would necessarily look at Beckett and think, "Oh, she must be a fan of the books," right?
Yeah, yeah. Just because she's grilling him kind of hard, so
Mhm.
she doesn't come. And I feel like that might contribute to why she's treating him like that too, because she's trying to hide. I think the fact that she's a fan.
Oh, yeah, like, I think she's kinda hitting the ground running with, like, her, cop persona, her tough cop
Yeah,
persona,
yeah,
and I think over the episode, we kinda see her, like, Beckett personality actually come. She leads with her Detective Beckett
yeah,
personality, but then throughout the episode, I think we see Kate come through.
yeah. So he asks for copies of the crime scene photos so he can share with his friends in his writers group, and she gets really upset.
But can you imagine though? Because I mean, this is really before the proliferation of true crime. I mean, we've always had true crime to some extent, but, like, not the way that it is today, and,
Yeah.
like, I could just see these crime novelists just sitting around and, like, going to, look up public records and finding crime scene photos and I don't know, stuff to write about and talk about. I'm sure they would all be fascinated.
But so Castle goes home and we get a peek at his home life. Martha has brought that guy that she saw at the bar home and she's singing with him at the piano and Alexis is doing homework again still. Um and I had mentioned I think in Discord that I liked the scene where Castle squirts whipped cream into his mouth straight from the bottle. And it was actually this episode. I had forgotten that it was from the pilot. I
Yeah, I
love
mean,
that.
he's a big kid, right?
Yeah,
Like, there's something
definitely.
very childlike about him.
But yeah, so he takes Alexis to his office where he pulls the two books that they had that from the crime scenes that Beckett had talked to him about. And he's like contemplating, oh, what is going on? And she's just, spitballing with him. And I like the little details in this interaction between them, like the way that he slides her down the hallway in just her socks and reminds her that she's not supposed to go on his fan sites, which I thought was really cute.
Yeah, I mean, can you imagine, like, that's the one boundary your parent has is, like, "Don't go on the fan sites about me because I don't there's things I don't want you to see about me."
Yeah, I mean, fans can be kind of intense, so I can see why he would say that.
Yeah, I mean, I get it, I get it.
And given like they show us later what his fan mail looks like, I get it too.
Yeah, no, I definitely get it.
He knows the types of people that are out there reading his books and getting fixated.
Yeah, and I'm sure he's yeah, got a lot of really intense fans. I mean, because he even tells Beckett, right, like, "Oh, yeah, that's it's all crazy." Like, it's not just, there none of it's not crazy, so which I don't know what that says about fans, though, because I don't I'd prefer to think of it as passion. I'm passionate
Yes.
about things.
I mean, we're passionate about things. That's why we're doing the podcast.
Exactly, it's passion. It's passion, not obsession. And then I also like in this scene too where, they're talking about Martha moving in and how she's kind of just moved in. And I think that's one of my favorite parts of Castle is that early on we established that there's this multi-generational household.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something that really makes Castle stand out. And it also really adds to the character of Castle because, like, pretty much every episode, there's some sort of contention, or we see Castle have to contend with, his mom and his daughter, and so I don't
Mhm.
know. I really like how it centers the character.
Yeah, because he'll like go investigate, but then he'll come home at the end, and he's got Martha and Alexis there, and they really help round out and add like a wholesome kind of bookend to the episode. That's what I like about them.
For sure.
So the next morning, Beckett arrives with a whole box of Castle's books. And I think when I first watched this episode, I was like, oh, wow, she went and cleared out the bookstore. But it turns out they're her books.
Yeah, I mean, it's so funny because, like, my question is, like, is Kate Beckett one of us? That's what I really wanna know
Yeah, yeah.
because, I mean, she's got all the books and, all the like, she knows everything, and, like, the funny thing is I think, she actually had her name in the books. That's how we know they're her
Yes.
books, right?
That's
Like,
serious, right?
from the library of Catherine Beckett. She's getting teased, and then she just asks, like, keeps asking the guys, like, if they have problems with reading, and I don't know, I kinda like the vibe here, she's a reader, and she's not ashamed of it.
It's cute, and it makes you wonder, like, how did she feel inside while she was being Detective Beckett to Castle, right? Was she, like, dying on the inside? Like, "Oh my god, I'm meeting Richard Castle."
She's probably like, "No, don't fangirl," but that's the thing too about New Yorkers. If you ever go to New York, I mean, that's a one thing that you'll see, like, because 'cause you'll be walking around, like, Manhattan, and, like, you could see a famous person, but nobody cares, and it's just like, we don't it's not like LA, like, where you see famous people and people, like, engage. It's you see a famous person and you keep walking because nobody cares. Unless it's Beyoncé, maybe. Maybe you care. You see Beyoncé in New York.
But Esposito sits down at her desk and he says the last thing that he wants to do when he goes home is read about murders. He asks why she does it, and she just asks him, like, "Aren't you curious about why people do it?" Which I don't know. Do you think that's the actual reason that she reads murder fiction? Or is it just that this is just like a guilty pleasure of hers and she's just trying to justify it some way?
Yeah, and I think it's a guilty pleasure because
Yeah.
I mean, thinking about the theme of Castle and, like we've talked about, sort of how Castle really belongs to a family of shows. And that family of shows, the one thing they have in common really is the romance between,
Yeah.
the consultant character and, the
And
lead
the
agent or
detective.
detective.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that's part of it, right? Because my sense is that all of these novels have some level of like romance or love. And I totally get it because I personally probably, it has probably been a decade or more since I've picked up a pure, nope, that's not true because I found a book I liked not too long ago that's a romance book, but it's been a while. Like, this is the first book in a long time that I picked up that's a pure romance type book, as opposed to, being sci-fi fantasy with a love story in it or being crime and love story in it. So I think it's guilty pleasure, but it's grounded in a language or, yeah, I think that's the right way to say it. It's grounded in a language that she understands.
So boxes of Castle's fan mail arrives, and Esposito tells Beckett that Castle is there talking to the captain, and he tells her that Castle has offered to help with the investigation, and she tries to get him to talk to her in private. To like, I guess she wants to like tell him, no, I don't want to do it, but he's like, nope, and he just cuts her off.
Mhm.
But so they go to read his fan mail together, and this was really cute. This is a good little scene between them. He keeps peeping at her over one of the letters until she snaps at him, and then he's like flirting with her, and I think she's thrown off by this because one, she's a fan. Two, she's a detective, and they're at work, and it's probably inappropriate. And I think she's irritated too because her captain just cut her off and made her work with him without even asking for her input.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, I think that's the thing, right? Is like she's like this sort of premier detective, and now she's having
Hmm.
to work with a consultant, and probably people at the police station are like, ha ha ha, she's working with a consultant. Like, she needed a consultant for her case.
Well, plus Esposito mentions that she's a control freak, so
Hmm.
people must know that. So yeah, it must drive her crazy that she's being forced to do this.
Yeah, he's in her space.
Yeah. Finally, she like asks him why he's there because of their previous interaction, like him asking for the crime scene photos just so he can like show it off to his writer buddies. She knows, or she surmises that he's not there out of a sense of justice. So she asks, "Are you just here to annoy me?" And he said tells her that he's actually there for the story.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the really interesting things about this is trying to figure out, what is going on here in this particular scene because I think actually one of my favorite lines is, sometimes there's no story. Well, he's like, there's always a story. You
There's
just have to
always a
find it.
story.
And so, yeah, I think that's really, we call that a cold reading, right? What he does when he's like, I'm going
Yeah,
to use you as an example. And he actually says, under normal circumstances, someone as pretty as you would never be a cop.
yeah.
And so he does that cold reading, and I
To
think
borrow
he
from
gets
the
too close.
mentalist.
Yeah, right. And I think he gets too close too quickly, and that's a
Yeah,
problem.
because as like he's talking and doing this reading, like her face starts changing, right? Like she's at first like kind of egging him on, kind of like, yeah, let's see what you got kind of thing. But then as he keeps talking, like she starts looking like uncomfortable and like serious, and like he's like you said, he's like hitting it on the nose. So
Yeah, and I just wondered too, like, was it really a cold reading, or do we think he like went and looked her up? Because
I
he
don't
could
know, but
obviously get the info.
how much would he have been able to find about her though?
True.
Because she doesn't seem like the social media type, and I think back then social media was just kind of taking off, not really a common thing. But yeah, so I don't know how much he would have been able to find out about her. So
Yeah, unless he found her MySpace and, got in there and read all of her posts and listened to all of her playlists. I don't know.
who's this Tom guy?
Tom is the MySpace guy. I feel like we have to tell people that in case they
Oh
don't know.
yeah, yeah. When you joined MySpace back in the day, your first friend was Tom. He had this distinctive picture of him like laughing at a desk in a white t-shirt or something.
Yeah, they turned that into a meme after the whole Twitter went down kind of thing. Like, don't you miss Tom?
So Beckett here used the word aping, and I did not know what that word meant. I had to go look it up, but it means to copy closely but ineptly. So just a little bit of trivia there.
Yeah, I mean, because I don't think I would have picked it out, and I do seem to remember it kind of being a thing in the 2000s, but almost like more of an Urban Dictionary slang type term.
I mean, I looked it up in Merriam-Webster, so it's definitely
Okay.
like in the dictionary now. So, but yeah, I didn't look at when it was when it's the first mention was. But yeah, that was a little something new I learned from doing this. But so Beckett comes across a letter with a drawing of the flower crime scene. And so they print the letter, and she tells him that, oh, it'll take a week to get the results. And this kind of surprises him. And he pulls out his phone, which is a flip phone, right?
Mhm.
Just sign of the times there. But he calls the mayor's office to pull strings and comes back to say that he'll have their prints in an hour. And Beckett tries to tell him that he can't just jump the line. And then, right on cue, another detective tells her that they found another body. Which, now that I think about it, like, how did they no, like, because she's been the one to figure out that it's crime scenes, like, to do with his books. So, did they get a call and it's just in general it's a body? Or is it just, oh, we somehow. Oh, actually, no. I think it was she had told Ryan and Esposito to familiarize themselves with all the crimes in the books, right? So maybe they had like a list of scenes to look out for.
And not only that, but I think it could just be too, like, we have a murder, it looks kinda weird, it's probably something from this book or something
Mm,
related.
yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's true.
My thing with that scene was, him calling in to get the fast track on the testing. On one hand, I can see him doing that, right? Because it is Castle. We know he's, a little bit more privileged, lives a little bit, higher in life. But then also it's kind of OOC or out of character is OOC. But like it's a little bit out of character for him because I don't know, like you would think he kind of understands having, been in the culture of writing about cops, how that would be perceived maybe, or, what that might do. But then I don't know, I'm saying that, but now I'm thinking like it's not like anyone was mad at Beckett. We didn't see her get
Yeah.
pushback, for jumping the line. So,
And I think it's like in character for him to just like, basically show off and
mhm.
basically like show that he can just call the mayor and like he's familiar with the receptionist and everything. And 'cause I think he starts talking about golf courses and like a woman or something like that. He gives off a very like Tony Stark kind of vibe,
Mhm. Yeah, like very, very much like Bachelor.
high life, right?
Mhm.
But so they go to the scene, and Castle immediately recognizes it from another of his books, Death of a Prom Queen. Beckett tells him to stay put, which becomes the recurring thing for the episode. She's always telling him to stay, like he's a dog or a child. Actually, I guess yeah, it's more like a child. I guess she's like, stay here, and he doesn't
Mhm.
listen. But he approaches Lainey while she's examining the body, and I love that she's a fan too. She shakes his hand, says she loves his books and that he has a real gift for the details of death, which I think is high praise for him, right? Because she's a medical examiner.
Yeah, no, I mean, like, I kind of popped on that line too because, I mean, she's excited to meet him, and I mean, yeah, that's high praise. Like, I don't think you can get better praise than having, like, a medical examiner and a cop both reading and loving your books.
Yeah, because I mean, as soon as he introduces himself, she's like, Richard Castle, the author? Like she knows him.
Mhm.
But so Beckett comes over and scolds him for not listening to her. But he points out a discrepancy in the scene. And this is important for later because this actually leads to how they end up solving the case. Beckett gets a call, and Castle's fingerprinting push to the front got them a match. I think he had told her that they would have it within the hour, right? After he
Yeah.
got off the phone, which is pretty fast.
Yeah, time machine stuff, really.
So they're going to go to arrest him because he's in Brooklyn. Uh, I don't know the layout of New York, but do you know where their station is supposed to be?
I feel like their station is probably supposed to be in Manhattan, like, in
Yeah.
the city.
Uh
Like,
huh.
because I mean, that's where I think that's, like, where Castle's apartment is and everything. I don't think they ever say it, but I get the sense that it is the city, which is Manhattan.
Is Brooklyn on another island?
Yes, it's a different borough.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, which you can get to Brooklyn, but, I mean, the traffic.
Yeah, we one of our listeners was telling us, "Oh, we should actually call a segment of our show Traffic Report because she enjoys our talks on the Mentalist unit about like
Mhm.
locations and traffic and transport times and stuff like that."
Like, can you really get there within, like, 2 hours? And the answer is
Yeah.
usually no, but TV magic allows us to be anywhere at any time.
Yeah, because even on Lucifer, it's LA traffic. So
Mhm. Mhm.
they get to Cabot's building. She tells Castle to stay in the car, and he tells her Scout's honor, but he immediately goes in and follows them once they go in. They bust into the apartment. They find like all these creepy drawings, pictures of the victim, and a shrine to Castle. When I saw that, I was like, it must have been kind of fun to be the prop people and have to make that shrine.
Yeah. And I also too kinda wonder, like, if Nathan Fillion has ever seen one of those, like, Nathan Fillion like, I'm sure, like, he's gotten a good deal.
Yeah, he must
Yeah.
have some. But as they're looking at this creepy shrine, he peeks over their shoulder and he explains to Becky that he was never a Boy Scout. So what his promise to her was empty. But then they find in the apartment, they find Allison's bloody shirt and a 22 caliber gun, and then they hear a thump, and Kyle Cabot, the guy whose prints was on the fan mail that they found, he's in the closet and he's banging his head against the wall, and you can tell that something's not quite right with him. But they arrest him anyway because I mean, and I don't blame them here because I think it's kind of like what they have to do, right?
Right.
Like Castle later argues that it's too easy. It doesn't seem like this is the right way to go, but I feel like they have to arrest him because of all the evidence in front of them. So
the evidence in front of them, I mean, yeah, it makes sense, right? But I mean, it is too easy, right? Because it's just kind of wrapped up in a nice little
Yeah,
package with a bow on
yeah.
it.
So back at the station, Beckett has checked his medical records and she says that he has pervasive developmental disorder. I don't actually know what that is. Do you know what that is?
I have no idea.
But Castle seems to know what it is. And I like that this I like this part of the concept of Castle in general, that because you wouldn't think that a best-selling author would have much to contribute to a police detective, but I like that it comes in the form of he's done extensive rabbit hole research into a
Hmm.
bunch of different things. So I like I found that really unique about this concept, and it was fun because I work in publishing too. So I love seeing like an author character, but he knows what it is. He explains that people with PDD tend to fixate on a single subject, which is basically what they saw in his apartment. So I think even though this guy Kyle Cabot is not the murderer, that actually was his shrine, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah,
think that's what it's pointing to, right? He really is sort of an obsessed fan, but he's not the murderer.
yeah, yeah. But they find out that Allison, the victim with the flowers on her, she was his caseworker. So
Hmm.
that's how they tie her to him. Beckett and Montgomery are ready to wrap things up, and Castle says it's too easy. But kind of like a callback to earlier, Beckett tells him, sometimes this is just the murderer, and it is that easy. It is that simple. But
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the things too about like a lot of the shows that we watch in terms of crimes, and like there's always a story and like an elaborate hoax, and you know, realistically, sometimes a murder is just a murder.
yeah.
You know,
But he insists there has to be a twist. It doesn't sit
there
right with
has to
him.
be a story.
So the guys are starting to take down their murder board, but Becca keeps looking into his medical history. But she asked him to leave the box of stuff for her, and she says she'll put it away. But actually, she just wants to keep looking at it because what Castle said has like started to like tingle her senses, I think.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's one of the things I appreciate about their dynamic. It's not this lopsided one person knows everything kind of dynamic. It really is a
Yeah, they complement each other.
they do. And they usually arrive at the conclusions around the same time. Or, like in this case, Castle was like, "It seems too easy." And Beckett's like, "It does, doesn't it? It does."
Yeah. I think though it like she doesn't listen to him right away, and it makes sense at this point because it's their first case together. So
Mhm.
she's not gonna like she doesn't really know his true like worth as a consultant yet because she's just irritated. She who's this best-selling author telling me how to do my job, right?
Yeah, I mean, she's just like, I'm being forced to hang out with this best-selling author for the day, so.
And despite me being a fan, he's pretty annoying.
Mhm.
Never meet your heroes.
Exactly. Exactly that.
But so the next scene is Castle sitting at a poker game, and oh my god, when I saw this the first time, I was like, "Holy crap, that's James Patterson!" Because I knew him by sight. He's such a famous author that I had seen interviews of him. I'd seen his pictures on his books and things like that. So I was tripping out. I did not recognize the other author, Stephen J. Cannell, and there's a woman there. I don't know if she's anybody either. I don't think I didn't see her in the credits or anything, so I think she's just there to fill one of the seats at the poker game.
Yeah, I wasn't sure, and I wasn't sure who she was. I actually don't know a lot of popular authors. That's the thing about me. TV shows, movies, popular authors, not so much.
But he's not really paying attention to the game.
Mhm.
They're like giving him crap about killing off Derek Storm, telling him that, oh, you should have done this, you should have retired him or crippled him, because then you could have just, kept milking him. But then they mention, and so Patterson mentions Alex Cross, which is his character, and then they mention Shane Scully, which is Stephen Cannell's character. But because he's so distracted, they're like, "Oh, I recognize this. You're having story trouble." So he does like the classic like I have a friend thing that people do
Mhm.
to like
The
doctors.
hypothetical.
Yeah. He feeds him a story about a story that he's working on, And he says there's this famous author whose crimes are copycats of his books. And then when he gets to the ending, they're like, that's terrible. And they tell him that can't be it. And it's just such a I really liked how they wove this into it. Like this poker game is a cool concept that
Right.
he's workshopping this crime with his super famous friends.
Well, I like the poker game, but then I also too just kind of like how they bring the concept of the story back, right? And I think on one hand, it's this is really good exposition in terms of how this show is going to be written and what their goal is here. Because if you don't look at this case as a story, it is really easy to get the wrong guy, right? Like if we didn't actually look for the story here, the wrong person would have been arrested and convicted. But by looking at the story and treating a murder like a story, you get to the answer.
Yeah, they tell him, you need a character who keeps digging until he finds the truth. And he's like, I know just the person. He's thinking of himself, of course.
Mhm.
But so the next day, or I don't know if it's the next day, but it's another day later at least, and he's at Beckett's desk. And she sees him and she's just like, oh my god, what is he doing here? She rushes over and she demands to know what he's doing, and he surprises her by standing up and giving her a gift, and it's an advanced copy of Stormfall, which is cute. She thanks him and admits it's kind of sweet, and he kisses her on the cheek. Ah!
Mhm.
And then he leaves. But he's doing all this to disarm her.
Mhm. Mhm.
And she sits down and smiles, which I thought was cute because she fell for it, at least for a little while.
Then she kind of figures out what's going on, that she's been taken. But I mean, like, it's so funny because, like, he has been flirting with her all episode, like, just
Yeah.
dropping comments here and there. And, like, this is, like, kinda him showing he kinda already knows, like, not really how to press her buttons, but how to sort of just get over on her.
So, do you think at this point that he knows that she's read his books? Because I don't know, I feel like one like death stare from her would mean that like Ryan Esposito wouldn't have exposed that she made them read all his skim through all his books and that they were her copies. But do you think he knows?
I kinda think he knows because and I can't remember the name of it, but there's, a book that she mentions of his, and he goes, "Only" oh, you're a fan because only hardcore Castle groupies have read
Yeah,
that
yeah,
one.
yeah. Yeah.
And so, like, I think he knows. Like, I think he suspects.
It was the Wiccan one, right?
I
Angry
think
Wiccans
so.
or something.
Yeah, and
Yeah. So Beckett storms into a library, and I'm not actually sure where they are. Like, is he just at a public library?
I think so because, there's this mention of Martha, like, "How
Telling
did
her
you
where
find
he
me?"
was. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not like he's like in his own private library at home or anything. It seems like he's actually somewhere out in public, right?
And do you think he did that because he knew that she would figure out sooner rather than later, or like to give himself some space so that she wouldn't find him immediately once she figured out what he'd done?
Yeah, I
Or
think so. I think he probably just went somewhere where he could, have some time to research because he was still in the middle of reading things, but then even then he like calls out to her what he has discovered that means that Kyle is innocent. And he shouts this to her as they take him away.
Mhm.
But Martha and Alexis come to pick him up and they say that they've agreed to drop the charges if he promises not to interfere anymore, which obviously is not going to happen. But Esposito finds Beckett staring at the mortarboard and she's put everything back up.
Of course
And
she
he's
has.
I love this part because he's like, "No, no, he got you." I I love Esposito and Ryan. They're such good secondary characters or support
Yeah.
characters.
Y
And it's a lot to do with the relationship between her and them. It's they have really good banter. Like she's not their boss, but she's higher than them somehow, right? Or maybe she has seniority.
yeah, I'm not really sure about that, but I feel like she's kind of like she's in
The lead
charge.
detective, basically, kind of thing, right?
Yeah, yeah, she's not really like in charge, but she's like the
She's in
lead.
charge of the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. I liked. because it's just like what they did in the beginning, right? We were talking about how the opening was like a parallel of their two different worlds. So they do this again as they're solving the murder. Esposito's talking to Beckett and she starts laying it out for him how out of the three murders, two were of convenience, but one was not. So it
Mhm.
doesn't fully line up. And meanwhile, they're showing us on the car in a car, Castle is getting driven home with Alexis and Martha. He's laying it out for them, that he thinks only one of the murders was the real target. And it was a good, they weren't in the same scene, and yet they were still coming to the same conclusion
Mhm.
separately, which is cool. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's already kinda showing, right, that they're kind of on the same page, like, they're
Yeah, yeah.
parallel, right?
And he explains to Martha, because I think Martha tells him that makes no sense. He says that when there's one murder, they look for motive, but when there's three, they don't really look for motive anymore because, especially if they have somebody like Kyle who seems like mentally disturbed, so they're just gonna chalk it up to, oh, he's crazy. So we don't need to look for motive. Yeah, he's just a
Right.
murderer.
Right, right, and I mean, I think that's kind of, like, the brilliance of this is that, he's sort of, like, drawing those lines out, and I just really like this taxi ride with the 3 of them
Yeah,
as
yeah.
he's, like, going through it, and, Martha's like, "That doesn't make any sense."
And it was kind of cute too because you kind of think that it's only him and Alexis at first, and then she
Mhm.
like pulls her head out.
Moves
She's
her
like,
head.
"No, what?" And it's like, "Oh, she's there too." Because I kind of thought at first that maybe she was sitting in the front.
Uh-huh.
Like I didn't think she was there, but yeah. So when she like pulls out and she's like, what?
Yeah,
What are you talking about?"
a lot of the drivers around here, they do not let you sit in the front.
Uh,
They do not, no.
so next we have on another day. I don't know if it's the next day. We'll just say it's the next day. Castle goes to Tisdale to meet with Allison's father, the flower victim's father. And as he's speaking to the receptionist, because I guess he made an appointment,
Mhm.
Beckett arrives. And what did you think about this interview? Because she had questions, but I felt like his questions were way more in depth and interesting. And it might be because he has a specific thing in mind, but I don't know. It kind of made her look not very thorough.
Yeah, so, I mean, I think his come from a place of, like, he can ask whatever he wants.
He's got a specific theory.
Right, he has a specific theory. He's used to kind of just, like, going after his research, right, his questioning, and just being able to do whatever he wants, whereas, like, she's kind of limited by her badge
Yeah.
and, not poking the bear because we've already seen, like, this Tisdale family is kind of a big deal, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so she's, kind of, that saying, like, "Speak softly, but carry a big stick," right? So she's speaking
Mm,
softly right now,
yeah.
whereas Castle doesn't really have the same limitation.
Yeah. But he mentions that Tisdale is worth $100 million, and he asks him specifically, "What happens to your money if something happens to you?" And he tells him that half goes to charity and the other half to his children. But now that half only goes to his son because Allison was murdered. And then, something to note, when Castle is approaching the building outside before he gets to the receptionist, we hear the Castle theme song, the rock intro. So outside, Beckett demands to know why he was asking all those questions because clearly he knows something that she doesn't, or he suspects something that she doesn't. And he lays out that Tisdale is dying. But right after he says that, he gets distracted by a hot dog vendor and he goes and orders one. And this is where she yanks him on his nose. I have never what did she did? Is it between her knuckles? Is that how
Yeah,
she did it?
yeah.
Okay, I don't know if I've ever done that to anyone. Have you?
No, no, and I don't think I would try.
But he points out that there were photos on the wall of Tisdale, and he's a lot thinner now, like sick thin. He mentions that the guy kept touching his hair, so it indicated he's wearing a hairpiece, possibly meaning that he's going through chemotherapy, and that he's wearing makeup. And actually, you can really notice it when they're in the meeting that his makeup is put on kind of poorly. It doesn't really match his face. You can see like the whole center of his face is like a
Mm,
different color from the sides and everything. So yeah, so Castle thinks he's terminally ill and they go to talk to his son because he's the guy who's going to be getting half his money when his dad dies. And that guy, Harrison, He tells him that everyone loved his sister and that she was always trying to see the good in people, and that he mentions that she actually brought that guy Kyle Cabot that they arrested around to try to get him to hire him, but he wouldn't do it because what did he say? It was for like safety reasons or something, right?
Yeah, yeah, I mean, basically kind of playing up the, he's crazy kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. But Castle mentions that his inheritance will double. He gets offended, which obviously he would. But Beckett assures him that she just has to be thorough and that it's for his benefit. And she asks where he was on the night of Allison's murder. And he says he was traveling for business. And then he shows her his passport, mentioning that he was actually out of town for all three murders. So when I first saw this, I was like, oh, yeah, it's him. I picked up on that all three murders thing. I was like, hey, how did you know?
About the other 2, right? Like,
Yeah,
how did you know
yeah.
when they
Like,
were? What time?
well, not only that, like, how did he even know that there were three linked to his? There were two others linked to his sister's murder. Like, that's not something that would have been made public. I don't think, because that's like something I think only the investigators would know, right?
Yeah, like, at this
So
point in time.
that was pretty sus.
Yeah.
But outside, Castle seems kind of crushed, right? He was like, I was so sure it was him. But now the tables have turned because Beckett is the one who's all smug and she's telling him, no, don't take it so hard. You're just a writer. But he can tell that she knows something too. So she explains that he's clearly lying and that he handed her the alibi for all three murders without asking for the dates. And I love this interaction because when she lays it all out for him, the only thing he gets out of it was, so I was right.
And she refuses to give him the win, which I appreciated.
Yeah, yeah. So at the station, they're checking into this new theory. Ryan is checking on his flights, and Castle's like bugging her, like, "Why can't you just admit I was right?"
Yeah.
I love this part. Beckett tells Esposito, "Oh, he totally fell for his alibi." But I like that because it sets up the really good dynamic between the four of them. Like she's
Mhm.
already teasing him in front of Esposito. I don't know. It was a real subtle, but I love that.
Yeah, kinda like bringing Castle into the fold.
Yeah, yeah. He's like one of them already. So it was I like that. But Ryan confirms that he has three tickets that he had bought. I guess he was talking to the credit card company. Beckett hones in on the passport stamps and that she thinks that they were probably forged. So Esposito's about to go call the passport people, but Castle says that that's not how he would have done it. And so that stops them. And they're like, well, what? And then he explains that he probably has a second passport that he bought in the black market.
Yeah, the second passport is weird, but okay.
And this is the point where they go to get their search warrant from Homer Simpson. I'm gonna have to go back and watch that again because I didn't recognize his voice, and I'm sure like he changes his voice too when he
Yeah,
does
they
Homer, but
they play up the voices when they voice the characters.
I want to go back and see if I can hear it in his voice, even though he probably does that. But here Castle's contribution comes into play again because he's talking golf and he I think he can sense that the judge is like a sucker for like gossip,
Mhm.
right? He tries to like pitch it in a way that like the judge is going to be like, "Ooh, what?" Like he shares juicy details while Beckett goes to take a call, and then that's when he kind of agrees to do it because Beckett comes back and says that, oh, he left early. The son left work early. So they think, oh, he's going to go home and destroy the passport. And I like that he offers his back to the judge to sign it.
Yeah, and then, I mean, also too, I kinda like how they played this scene because it really does come off just like you said, where it's like the judge is like at first he's like, "Oh, are you kidding me? I'm not going up against those people." And then as, he's getting the details, the gossip, he's like, "Oh, yeah, I can sign that."
Yeah.
And so it comes off more so as like that as opposed to like he only listens to Castle because he's a man.
Yeah.
And so I
Yeah.
like how they played that.
So at Harrison's place, he actually shreds his second passport, which I was like, wow, he must have a really strong paper shredder.
They do make paper shredders that can like shred credit cards and stuff. So
Oh, okay. Okay. Because, yeah, I mean, passports are kind of, the cover is pretty thick, right?
yeah.
It's like a fake leather kind of thing.
But I just I don't know how he expected that to work because all they had to do was call out immigration, like, and it falls
Yeah,
apart.
I don't know.
Anyway, sorry.
And I feel like he should have just burned it instead of I don't know. But then a detective meets them when they get to the apartment, and he tells them, "Oh, Harrison is in debt. His business is about to go under." So that like confirms like or not that supports the motive of money. And then before they go in, Beckett tricks Castle and tells her, "Oh, maybe you if you're gonna come in, you should be armed." And I love that he falls for it. He like totally buys it. And he goes and he
Mhm.
looks in the glove compartment, and that's when she handcuffs him to the steering wheel. But Castle has come prepared. He has a handcuff key in his wallet. So what was he talking about? He said something like handcuff me once.
Yeah. Yeah, I took note of that. It was like, "Handcuff me once, shame on me. Handcuff me twice, shame on you."
Yeah. So what is he referring to? Is he referring to when he got arrested earlier?
I think so. And then it's kind of like, a play on, like, "Fool me once, fool me twice." And so I don't know. Yeah, like, I thought it was funny.
So the guy Harrison, he shredded his thing, but I think he's taking the bag of shreds, right? Because doesn't it
Mhm.
fall down to the street like confetti? But
Mhm.
he takes the bag and he goes out the window, and meanwhile, Castle is taking off his shoe because he dropped the key on the ground, and so he can't get it, and he has to take off his foot so that he can grab it with his foot or grab it with his toes, which I thought was so funny. It was such a good way to end this thing because it's such a Castle thing for him to do. Oh, I brought a key, but oops, I dropped it. And now he's gotta like
Get
uh
it.
it
Yeah.
was good. But then he spots Tisdale coming down the fire escape. He calls Beckett and tells her, but then he chases after Tisdale. And oh my God, the scene of him like running after the guy, the way he's carrying the shoe in front of himself, and you can hear his bare foot slapping against the pavement too.
And it's so gross. That is so, so gross. Running through New York barefoot, oh my gosh.
But Beckett is coming on the fire escape, and she's yelling at Castle because she's pissed because he somehow got out of her handcuffs again. He's
Right.
once again come in like the child not willing to sit still. But then yeah, Tisdale gets Castle and he's holding him hostage. I love the line when Castle says, "Psycho here needs a breath mint." It's just these little touches that make it's like they insert humor at the funniest places.
Mhm.
But he starts aggravating Tisdale by taunting him, and
Mhm.
this is his way of like figuring out what the story aspect of the crime is, because it's not enough for he's established already that it's not enough for him to actually just get the detail, like the motive alone. He wants to know like the details of the motive. You know, it's for money. He killed Allison to get the money, but he starts figuring out that the guy Harrison killed his sister because of his relationship with his father, right? He
Mhm.
wanted to take his sister away from his father. And I like that he was like, wow, that's actually a really great story while he's being held hostage.
Yeah, I mean, he takes nothing seriously.
Okay, so this scene it cracked me up because he actually gets him to like balk at him, like he can't believe that that's what Castle's fixating on is the story. And so while he's distracted, he whomps him. I guess he hits him with his shoe, or does he hit him with his elbow? I don't
His
remember.
elbow, he did,
Okay.
like, the back. Yeah.
But like they had like the boxing bell sound effect over here. Did you hear it?
Yeah, I mean, like, basically, because it was a knockout, right?
Yeah, I thought that was I was like, what was that? It's just a bong. It came out of nowhere. I thought it was hilarious. But the way that he reacts after he stopped him too was just very Castle.
Like, "Did
It's
you
just
see that?" And I was like I just kept thinking, like, this is a little too early for, like, TikTok, right? And I mean, there were camera phones in 2009, but, like, it's a little too early for everyone to have an iPhone on the street recording,
yeah,
but, like, I was just kinda thinking the difference between then and now, because like, somebody would have been recording that, and,
yeah,
he would have been like, "You gotta put that on TikTok or YouTube or something."
yeah. It was so funny and yet and yet cute that he's just like he just wants like her to recognize I was such a badass. Did you see?
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, she's so upset with him because, I mean, he put himself in danger, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And she's supposed to keep him safe, and, he is her, like, favorite author, and I think she would feel bad if a civilian got hurt, and here he is just kind of always running in the line of fire.
Well, plus I feel like that would be something that would affect her career-wise. She got
Mhm.
because he's connected, he's friends with the mayor. If she got Castle killed or injured, she would have been in big trouble, I think.
Yeah, yeah, big trouble, plus I think she would just feel bad because I mean, where
Yeah.
her book's gonna come from?
But he assures her that the safety on Harrison's gun was on the whole time, and she's like, "You could have told me that." But I was just like, "When would he have told you that? Like, should he tell you while he's being hostage? Oh, his safety's on." Because then
I mean,
Harrison would know too, right?
yeah, that's the thing, and I mean, maybe because then she would have to just shoot quickly, but that was the thing, I didn't know how Castle knew that the safety was on because did he
Yeah.
even see?
Yeah,
Or
I
was he
don't
I think
know.
just kind of bluffing and, like, said, "Oh, his safety was on."
After like they're clearing him away, they've arrested him. Beckett starts her goodbyes because the case is closed. Castle flirts with her again and suggests that it doesn't have to be the end, that they could go to dinner and debrief each other.
He's inviting her to be the next Mrs. Castle already.
Yeah, yeah. But oh my god, I love this scene because she declines and he says it would have been great. And she leans over and whispers, "You have no idea." That was this scene, it gave me goosebumps because I was like, "Oh my god, this is why I love this show," because the chemistry between them was crazy.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, it just on the first episode, right? Like, this dynamic already developed, and, I mean, it's like the 2009 version of Can Somebody Match My Freak? And I think that is the 2 of them, right? Like, because they are just both very I think she comes off as much more of a serious person, given her job and, like, what she has to do, but there are those moments, right, where, I mean, she basically just gives it right back to him in terms of, like,
Yeah.
his one-off comments.
And like they do this throughout the show where she's like the superstar detective and yet she has all these interests in the like there's a lot to her personality. Like she likes magic, she I mean we know now that she likes books and she has all this pop culture like knowledge. So she has like all this stuff that matches his interest too because he's a total dork, a
Mhm.
geek, right? So I like that. But I love the way that he's looking at her when she whispers that to him because you can see it on his face. He's just gone. He's a goner, right?
Mhm. Mhm. And, like, I love the playlist that they had on this episode and, that song as he's walking away to stop and stare and,
Yeah. Yeah. It was the perfect song for that scene, I thought. So at home, Castle no longer has writer's block. He's typing out something from his latest novel, which I think Gina had said is due in 3 weeks. So
Mhm.
he's got a lot of writing to do, but
And, yeah, I mean, like, did he find a new muse? I guess we
kind
will
of
find
seems
out.
like it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But at the station, I keep saying the next day. We'll just
I mean, hey, at least days are passing on the show.
yeah, yeah.
Let's let's give them credit for that.
So Montgomery calls Beckett into his office and says he was just talking to the mayor and that she has a fan. And she's confused and then she figures out what he meant and it was because he says that Castle has the star of the main character for his next series, a tough but savvy female detective.
He has to do research. Has to.
I love this scene between her and Montgomery because like the way that when she comes to the realization what he's talking about, she's like, "No, no." Her reaction was just so good.
Yeah, I mean, she's like, "Oh, no. No, no."
And she says, "Sir, he's like a 9-year-old with a sugar rush, totally incapable of taking anything seriously," which really summed him up really well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But she asks, "How long?" And he says it's up to him. And she turns around and he's there to smile at her and lift an eyebrow.
Mhm.
Ah, such a good pilot from start to finish.
Yeah. No, I really enjoyed it, and like I said, at the outset of the episode, it just really drew me back in, and very quickly, actually. So it was good. I think it was a very strong pilot, and it's no wonder that even though the first season's only 10 episodes, that the show was, picked up for a second season.
Okay, on our Mentalist and Lucifer units, we're doing watches as we go through the show, but I don't have any ideas yet, so I guess we'll come to that as we go along. Do you have any ideas?
Not yet.
Yeah, we'll note them down as we come to them. But so we have our next segment is author's notes. We're gonna basically talk about behind the scenes thing. So the director for this episode was Rob Bowman, and X Files fans might recognize his name because he was a longtime producer on that show.
He was, and he's also one of the producers of the X Files, who I think is really attributed with sort of the comedy aspect of the
Yeah,
show.
yeah,
So I think that makes so much sense, right? That he was the
yeah,
episode's director because there's a lot of comedy here.
yeah, and it flowed so well from scene to scene. So but also, there were two different station sets that were used in the episode. So there's one, it's like the one with the pink brick wall next to Beckett. I think that's the one that they use when she finds him at her desk and he gives her the copy of Stormfall. That's the old one. And then the other one they use, which I know we see when she brings in the box of books for Ryan and Esposito, that's in like the one that they use for the rest of the show. So
Yeah, do we know why that is? Is it just because like they did
I have no
reshoots or
idea.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know sometimes with pilots, like they'll make the pilot episode, but then
Yeah.
they'll test it and then they reshoot before it goes to air.
I did see something about how it was shorter when they first pitched the show and that Ryan wasn't in the initial one. So I guess
Mm.
maybe they added things in and maybe that's why like any kind of scenes with Ryan are all in cuz yeah, actually, now that I think about it, I don't think Ryan was in the pink station scenes. Those Esposito was definitely there, but I don't know if I
Mhm.
saw Ryan in those.
Hmm. I mean, that could be it. And it's also interesting that you say that it was, pitched shorter because I can't imagine this being a half-hour comedy.
Yeah. I think it was like something like 35 minutes or something like that. That's what I read on the IMDb
Ah.
page. Yeah. All right. So our next segment is Casket Corner. Casket is the ship name for Castle and Beckett, which I like. Sometimes I don't really like the ship names, but I like this one.
Yeah, I mean, it's a show about murder and their ship name is Casket. I mean, can you
Yeah.
get any more clever?
It's cute. But yeah, so I love that she's a castle groupie. We talked about that.
Yep.
And her you have no idea. Oh, good stuff.
Yeah, and I just really liked all of the subtle, like, compliments that he places, like, throughout the show,
Yeah.
like, "You have beautiful eyes," or, he compliments, how cute
Her
the first
frown.
yeah, and I'm just like, "Okay." You know, he's obviously noticed her, right? Like, he's
Yeah.
noticed Miss Catherine Beckett.
But like that you have no idea was such a loaded line. I mean, sorry to go back to that, but cuz like it kind of like hints that, she's been thinking about things too. Like, I don't know. Like do you think that she was cuz a lot of time seems to go by. So I don't know. It kind of hints that she's been thinking about him too.
I don't know if it's that she's been thinking about him, which I could buy, like, I
Yeah.
could take that read, but I also think it's just she is
She
just
knows
giving
that
it
she's a
back to him.
catch.
Well, she knows she's a catch, but she's just kind of throwing it back at him, right? Like the whole like, "Oh, you wanna tease me? Now let me just kind of," because and that's sort of their dynamic throughout the show, right? Like, it's kind of the Castle might say something silly, and then, usually she lets it roll, but then sometimes she kinda comes back with something. And so I think that was just her coming back.
And plus, she thinks that this is the last time they'll see each other, I think. Right?
Mhm.
Because this comes before she learns from Montgomery that they're going to have to work together some more. So this is like her last word to get in before they part ways,
Yeah, no,
which is very Beckett.
yeah, I mean, yeah, and so, like I said, I could take your read on it in terms of, like, she's been thinking about it too, but, like, I feel like a lot of the tension has been coming from the Castle side in this first episode.
Alrighty, bestseller list. Favorite scenes? Um I like when in that first interrogation room scene when he mentions the first crime scene that only hardcore castle groupies would know that one. So I
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah, like, he figured it out, and he was like, "Oh, you're a fan." Um, so I think my favorite one is really the when he's getting out the handcuffs, because the ingenuity that he has to use to get the key, then he's running barefoot, and then, there's that whole, like, line that we already said about "Cuff me once, shame on me. Cuff me twice, shame on you," because he's not staying in those cuffs. But what I really, really found funny, and this was, when I first rewatched it, is Castle, no! Because, that meme has been so viral right now because of the White Lotus season 3. Slight spoilers, but people have probably seen this meme or the GIF where it's like, was it Parker Posey's character is saying, "Piper, no!" And that's what that reminded me of. I was like, "Is that the original Piper, no?"
Okay, you're gonna have to show me this because I don't know what you're talking about.
You don't know Piper,
No,
no!
I don't. You're gonna have to show me on Discord later.
Oh, man. Oh, yeah. So me and one of my friends have been saying that to each other. I mean, we've kinda stopped now, but, in the aftermath of the season 3
Yeah,
finale, we
yeah.
were constantly saying it.
Okay, favorite lines. Mine was from Esposito. He says, "A control freak like you with something you can't control. No, no, that's gonna be more fun than Shark Week." And for people who don't know, like for a while back then, Shark Week was like this. Was it Discovery Channel?
Yeah, like, they had Sharknado and all that, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. There were like shark movies and all kinds of things. It was kind of crazy. I never got into it, but it was a very popular reference for a long time. So
Yeah. No, yeah. So, mine was and we've already said this in part, but it's when Castle tells Beckett in the interrogation or not in the interrogation room, but, like, when they are going through the letters, there's always a story, you just gotta find it, because he has some really good lines in season 1, and he's kinda like a
yeah.
poet almost when he talks to her and, yeah, so I really like that.
Okay, so those of you who listen to our other units on Rom-Com Detectives, you know that we usually end things with a quiz. So our quiz for the Castle unit is called Beckett's Interrogation. So we're going to take a quick break and then we'll come back with our very first Beckett's Interrogation. All right, we are back with our very first Beckett's Interrogation. You can check out our social media accounts for a bonus question in a couple of days. The way this works is I'm going to ask 5 questions of increasing difficulty about the episode we just discussed, and you'll have 5 seconds to come up with the answer.
I am a notoriously bad quiz taker, so I'm interested to see how this goes.
All right, question 1. What is Castle's safe word?
Apples.
Yeah, there you go. See, you got at least one. No, no more pressure. But then they get harder. All right.
Uh-huh.
Question 2. What message does Ryan find inside one of Castle's books from Beckett?
From the Library of Catherine Beckett.
Yes. Very
Okay.
good. Okay, getting harder. Question 3. Which shoe does Castle chase the subject with in his hands?
I think it's his right shoe.
It's actually his left shoe.
Oh, okay.
I thought it was his right too, but yeah, I went back to go look and it's his left. Okay, question 4. What condiment did Castle ask for from the hot dog vendor?
I wanna say ketchup.
It was hot mustard.
Hot mustard. See, Castle's a mustard guy. I should have known. I
I,
should have known his character.
I,
Quality character.
I remembered that you like mustard, so that's why I had a different question and I changed it to this one just for you.
And see, and I still got it wrong. Okay.
Okay, final question. What kind of rose petals were found at Alison Tisdale's scene? This is what Castle was researching in the library.
Mm, I don't have it. I don't know.
It's grandiflora.
Yeah. See, I told you I'm not a great quiz taker, but, always happy to provide some entertainment.
Yeah, you did good for your first one.
Yeah, I mean, I hope people enjoy. I mean, I like doing these quizzes. I like taking quizzes, but I have never been good. I can like talk about details all day long and then start asking me questions and specific answers I cannot answer.
I would not do well on these quizzes. I told Karen and Tara like maybe one of these days we can flip it around and you can you can give me the quiz and see how I do. Okay, any last thoughts?
No, I mean, like I said before, I enjoyed the pilot episode and I'm looking forward to seeing what comes in season 1.
All right. So if you're enjoying Rom-Com Detectives, please leave us a review or rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. For our question of the week, leave us a comment on Spotify, YouTube, or Reddit and tell us whether you've read any of Richard Castle's novels. Because I didn't know this when I first watched the show, but there are actually Richard Castle novels out there that they had someone write under a pen name and they released them with Nathan Fillion's picture and everything. It's really cute. But if you'd like to join additional conversations about Castle, you can visit the Castle subreddit at reddit.com/r/CastleTV. To contact me and Neoshia, you can email us at host@romcomdetectives.com. You can follow us on Instagram, Threads, or Blue Sky at romcomdetectives, or leave us a voicemail or text message at 1650 733-XOXO or 9696. This episode of Rom-Com Detectives was recorded on June 11, 2025. Rom-Com Detectives Castle Unit is co-hosted by Krista Watanabe and Neoshia Roemer and is produced by Pico's House. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you guys next time for a breakdown of episode 2, Nanny McDead. Bye.
Bye, everybody.